Welcome back, principal students. So we are going to, this should be the last video, yes, of this chapter. And it is a long chapter. Luckily you have this week and spring break to look at it. So, and you had last week if you were ahead on your test and did that early. So you'll need the time on this one. And the chapter after builds on this but gets weird. So we got a lot going on. What you'll notice here in columns A through E, these are the different budgets that we just put together. We just spent 5 videos putting these together, right? And all I did is I literally just went back a tab and copy pasted these. So we have the January stuff, we have here the cash receipts, you got the inventory purchases, the cash payments, you got your S&A budget, all this stuff just really neatly put together, and we all did this together. Yes. There's your payments S&A, and there's your cash budget. And these should all be, if I did this right, the same exact numbers, just copy pasted from the previous page. Not even copy pasted. I set it up so that if I change a number there, these change. And then over here in H&I, we've got, you may recognize these. Hopefully you recognize these, right? This is an income statement from the quarter ending March 31st. These are all your elements, right? What's on an income statement? You want revenue, you want cost of goods sold, you subtract the two, you get gross profit, you want your selling and administrative expense, and you get operating income. Most of the time we stop there in this class, but we're going to throw a little bit of a twist on there. We're going to put interest expense down there to get us net income. Why? Why not? We'll start giving you a harder one. All right, and there's our balance sheet. Probably heard of this before too. There is your current assets. And there's cash, accounts receivable, inventory, prepaid insurance, total current assets. You have your long-term assets here. I plugged in a number for $100,000 in equipment and fixtures. Minus accumulated depreciation gives us your total assets. Here's your liabilities. You got your AP, your commissions. And I custom built these based on the problem. We have $20,000 of common stock sitting in there. We got retained earnings. I have down here a prior retained earnings, right? So remember, retained earnings is cumulative. All right. And actually over here, I have a prior depreciation number. We'll need that when we take the accumulated depreciation. Let's see. We have some February AP, which we calculated prior to... yeah. Anyway, we'll take care of that in a little bit. And there's February and AR. And remember, we calculated those on the previous page. I can show you how to do that again. I will show you how to do that again. Okay. And by page, I mean video. All right. So first we start with, let's just look at this. Well, it's intimidating. It's a lot of stuff. You go, oh my, there's so much stuff. I don't remember it all. Well, you don't. You do one thing at a time. So let's start with, okay, we got the quarter ending, so we got that right, versus the point in time. If you've had me for Principles 1, we know it's real important. Income statement's going to be a period, and the balance sheet's going to be a point in time. And so the quarter ending, or January through March, something like that. So we're looking for our sales revenue. All we do is we think, oh yeah, this total sales for January, February, March, those are our total sales. Notice we're not using cash down here. We're using total sales. All right. Now your cost of goods sold comes from the inventory purchases budget. You take this cost of goods sold line. Gross profit, you remember you just take revenue minus cost of goods sold. Selling administrative expenses. Let's see, go down here, we have the selling administrative budget, total selling and administrative expenses, right there. And that's going to give you, we'll go all the way up here, your operating income. Interest expense, remember we just calculated interest on the cash budget. There's our interest expense. $5,185. And your net income is going to be subtracting the 2. All right, so that becomes your income statement. Very straightforward. These little green things just say I used a different formula for that one than I did for the one above it. It's going, hey, sure, and I am, so we're okay. All right, so our balance sheet, what are we looking for? Our cash. How do we get cash? Let's look at this here. Well, how much cash do we have on hand? It's going to be our ending cash balance. All right. Accounts receivable. How do we get accounts receivable? Well, if you remember from over here, we had, let's see, our credit sales were $66,000 in January. And we paid it off over 3 months, right? We said 13 plus 39 plus 13. So we know we don't have anything left that's receivable in January. In February we do though, right? We had 72,600 and we're receiving 14.5 plus 43, which means the remainder is going to be 14.5. All right, in March, we had 79,860 in credit sales, of which we collected 15, and that's it. And so the difference, the 79 minus the 15, is going to be 63. So to get our receivable, what we haven't collected in February plus what we haven't collected in March. All right. That tends to confuse people a little bit. So make sure you can get to that number. Your merchandising inventory. Where is that? Well, that is your ending inventory balance. Desired ending inventory. So you just take that number right there. How about prepaid insurance? Remember seeing that somewhere? Remember prepaid insurance is an asset? That's, people always struggle with that one a little bit. Let's see, we have the insurance expense. Well, let's calculate that, right? We know we have $800 of insurance times 12 months. Let's go ahead and put those in brackets. So that's how much we paid, minus $800 a month times 3 months. Yeah. $7,200. Let me go back down and show you how I got that, right? I have insurance expense here. And we did this on the last... it was probably about 2 videos ago, right? But we know the insurance expense is $800 a month. And we know it's paid January 1st. Right? So on January 1st, we paid $9,600. And that's called a prepaid. Now we used some in January, and that's what's going on here. We used some in February, and that's what's going on there. And we used some in March. So we're drawing down that prepaid account. January, February, March. Which means the prepaid balance, it's like a gift card, right? You prepay it, and then you use it. You take what we prepaid, and you subtract what you've incurred, $7,200. Or you just take $800 times 9 months. That's where that number comes from. Total current assets, all you can do is add those. Yay, financial accounting. Isn't this a blast? Equipment and fixtures I gave you. Less accumulated depreciation. So what do we have? We have I gave you a prior depreciation here, which I gave you. This is a given. You don't have to calculate that. But then we have depreciation expense. Remember from the S&A budget? So we scroll over here, we scroll down. We have depreciation expense. And that's going to give you your accumulated depreciation. So your total assets are going to equal current assets plus equipment and fixtures plus accumulated depreciation. Okay, I'm going to pause and get a drink of water. I'll see you back in 1 second. Okay, we're done, and we just calculated. No, we're done. We're back. Sorry, I had my water. We just calculated total assets here, and there's one little tiny mistake that throws everything off here. We're subtracting accumulated depreciation. So a couple ways of doing this. I'm just going to put a minus sign here and then put these guys in parentheses. So that'll take that number, and that gets us a smaller number. Right? If you add these two, your assets are overstated because you take your equipment minus your depreciation, right? Because of your book value of the equipment. There's your total assets. All right, now we have accounts payable. Where do we get the accounts payable? Well, remember we calculated a couple videos ago over here. You got your February and your March. If we go over to your inventory purchases budget and your cash payments to suppliers, right? We know we're going to purchase in January $67,800, and we're going to pay it off in 3 months. 33 plus 27 plus 6 will be your 67. So we don't have to pay anything left on there. But in February, we bought 74,000. We paid 37 off there, 29 off there, and the difference will be the 7,478. Same thing with March. We purchased that, and 41,000 there. All right, which means the rest of it's due there. So our accounts payable is going to be the sum of February and March's amounts that we purchased but did not pay. Again, that's kind of like accounts receivable. Spend some time looking at that. And make sure you can get those numbers. Salaries and commissions payable. So if you remember back in the day, the commissions expense was paid a month after incurred, which is why in January here, we got a $2,200 commission expense and we paid it in February. In February we had an expense and we paid it in March. And in March we had a commission expense that we haven't paid yet because we're not going to pay till April. So let's actually make sure I'm in the right box before I do that. All right, there we go. March commission expense that we have not paid is the payable. Okay, notes payable is simply, when we come down here, that's your loan balance. So your total liabilities is going to equal the sum of these guys. This is what you owe. All right, so here I gave you a common stock number. Your retained earnings, how do we get that? Well, you take your beginning retained earnings. That's your beginning retained earnings. And you add in your net income. And that should give you your retained earnings. So if you remember, beginning retained earnings, which I gave you that number, plus net income minus dividends will be your new retained earnings account. That's your statement of retained earnings, essentially, in a nutshell. So your total stockholders' equity, you add these up, and your total liabilities and equity, you take your total equity plus your total liabilities. I was messing around. These shouldn't have decimals. There we go. 198,962. And how do you know you did it right? Well, your 198,962, which is your liabilities and equity, equals your assets. So your balance sheet balances, which is rare. No, it should always happen. Should not be rare. I'm pretty convinced I did this right. And it looks like that's the end of our videos. Hooray! So have a good chapter. Make sure you get an early jump on this. Don't be one of those folks, in the midnight you're starting this and it's the homework and it's due, because these are relatively complicated. Enjoy. But actually, these are my favorite part of accounting, is these budgets. I thoroughly enjoy them. So let me know if you have any problems. Have a good one. Bye.